Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the May 1st, 2017 episode of Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards, a podcast about absolutely nothing, and yet somehow everything. We are joined by our regular cast of characters. We had some guests on the program last time around, but we've got our full crew back on board here this evening. Mr. Anwar Perez, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Robert. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic. I'm doing fantastic this evening. And also good to have Mr. Joseph McGee back with us as well here tonight. Joseph, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Very well. You definitely found a great replacement for me in Andrew. Not only does he look like me in real life, he also sounds like me in the podcast world. So we're very much brothers from different mothers. I hate that I missed it last show. Of course, I was watching the Red Hot Chili Peppers do their thing, which was pretty amazing for a bunch of guys in their early to mid 50s. Still rocking out.
That is amazing.
But I did listen to the show, and you guys did a great job. And Andrew was definitely a good replacement for me. Hopefully we can get him on with me at some point as well.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have Andrew back on at some point there. And what were you going to...
No, I was just going to agree. Like, it was a good show, and having Andrew give a lot of good insight and perspective on WrestleMania from being there in person, plus, all the other things going on we spoke about was really good. But yeah, to Joseph's point, we can always... Maybe it's good to get a fourth person involved every now and then, see how that goes.
Yep. And we definitely plan on having some additional guests in the future as the podcast continues to evolve and change over time. I got a few people in mind that I'd like to have on, but Andrew will definitely be one of those folks who will be a recurring character, and we appreciate him coming in and being a fill-in for Joseph there. If he ever needs a stunt double, we know where to find one there for a relatively short period of time as well. But to kind of kick things off here on this episode, I want to talk briefly about the WWE Payback pay-per-view, which was held this past Sunday, April 30th. This is one of those pay-per-views that kind of is in between the big stuff, in terms of SummerSlam and other events that come around the middle of the year. But overall, I have to say this was a pretty strong show. But we're not going to run through the entire results here, but I was very impressed with the overall experience of this show. The lasting impression, of course, from the main event is that you've got Braun Strowman, who has now made Roman Reigns his you-know-what in terms of just beating him like a rented mule, to borrow a Jim Ross phrase there. But, the show overall was a lot of fun, with the exception of the House of Horrors match. That there just went on a far left-hand turn, and, some people were saying it's kind of like final deletion, whatever, but I don't even think you could call it that. I think this was their attempt almost at like a some type of a quasi-70s horror film that just did not work the way they thought it was going to.
And really, I think they were trying too hard. To go... I mean, they were already down this road, but I think whereas Final Deletion and any of the Broken Universe type stuff, that was tongue firmly planted in cheek. That was also, as crazy as it was and as ridiculous as that was, there were still also like ha-ha moments or gotcha moments and self-awareness, where this one was like you're supposed to suspend. It's one thing in pro wrestling when you suspend disbelief and you add a different layer into it that's outside of a wrestling ring. So you kind of have to toe that line. This didn't toe that line. This made you believe that Randy Orton showed up in a limo to this abandoned house of sorts to fight Bray Wyatt. And then when they announced that the match would be finished in the ring, it was like, all right, well then... It just was a bit much, so to speak.
Well, and technically, the match should have never even been on this pay-per-view because it was booked on Smackdown when they were both members of the Smackdown roster. This was pre-Superstar Shakeup. Unlike Jericho and Owens, which ended up started on Raw, had storyline implications on SmackDown, but this was just like straight up two SmackDown guys on a Raw pay-per-view.
Yep.
Just so happened that now Bray is a member of the Raw roster, but that match didn't just nothing. It just didn't fit in. And again, maybe it was just like, well, let's do it here. Get it out of the way. I don't know. And of course, and just full disclosure, I did not watch the show. I had a prior engagement last night. I tried to catch some of it on my iPhone on the network, but I just didn't get to catch a lot of it. Really, everything I'm hearing, save for the House of Horrors match, has been overwhelmingly positive. Sounds like it was a pretty good show, and I'll definitely catch up with it this week.
For a show that was designed, and you can kind of tell that they were like, all right, we're running through the most. Like, there are some things like that match and even the Jericho Owens match, even though there was a build there, you can kind of also tell that they were like, all right, we're just going to throw this match here. Or this is there are a lot of matches that was just going to be kind of there until they actually got their footing out. I was kind of, get over that hump. And it was still good. Everything was still flowed. Like, you could tell. I mean, the Joe Rollins match was awesome. The women's match was really good, unexpected, with Alexa Bliss defeating Bayley in her hometown. Well, the hometown part, but I meant, like, I really thought, well, they gave her WrestleMania. They're going to kind of give it maybe a couple months, but it does freshen things up with Alexa Bliss, and this shows how the company feels about her as far as, being in such a great position. And, I mean, the Hardy stuff was really good. The match with Cesaro and Sheamus was good. Obviously, Sheamus knocking Jeff Hardy's tooth out was something to see. And then the beatdown afterwards, worked well. Again, does this lead to more of the broken Matt Hardy or broken Hardys in WWE? I think so. I think that's what it's leading to. Which, I thought about yesterday. Everyone is like, I wonder how they get to that universe. I almost wonder if that now this almost comes about, like, not in the out of nowhere broken Matt Hardy just is either shows up or he's like knocked into this place or whatever. Either Hardy. But I wonder if it's more or less a thing, kind of like the Finn Balor demon thing, where it's like, if pushed too far, this is what really is going to happen, kind of thing. Like, using it in that context. So I don't know, but it was still good.
The other side of the coin there with the tag team match, everybody's into the Hardys, and I am too. I love that stuff. But I will say this, I'm just kind of geeked out over the final sort of firm handshake there between Cesaro and Sheamus, and those two guys getting on the same page and being a solidified tag team. Because I've been big fans of both of them forever. Even Sheamus, people have had their issues with Sheamus forever, but the pasty white guy from Ireland, that's fine by me. I can get behind that. It's just, it's just a cool combination of talent. I think those are two really old school bruiser types that are going to work really well together. Cesaro, just in my opinion, probably the best athlete they have on their roster. If there's anybody else who can eclipse him, I've not seen it yet, but really and truly, that combination there, it's going to be a great addition to the Raw tag team division there. And like you were saying there a minute ago, the hot potato game continues with the Raw women's title. They had Bayley having a little bit of a WrestleMania moment there, and then just as you would almost expect, she comes to her hometown and there it goes. Here's Alexa with her title run now, which, I'm fine with that too, because Alexa is very talented. It's not, we'll toss a bone here to our friend Andrew and say it's not like Nia Jax is getting a run with the title here, but, it is what it is. But overall, though, very solid pay-per-view. The Cruiserweight Championship match even, you had those two guys there, Austin Aries and Neville going back and forth, just, with everything that they were doing, having a purpose and a meaning to it. The finish, you kind of wonder if that's going to be a continuation of this feud for one more month, or if they're going to put somebody else in there to potentially feud with Neville over the title. But, regardless, it was a fun match and fun pay-per-view overall. Braun Strowman, he's got a rocket on his back right now, and they're pushing him as far as they can in terms of just beating the tar out of Roman Reigns at every opportunity he has. Where they're going with him,
he crushed him.
He did, really and truly. If you've not seen the show, this was a worse beatdown than probably what even he took on Raw here, a couple of weeks ago. But where they're going with Braun, though, it's got to be a main event level feud with somebody, but they've gotten him to a point now where, okay, he's obviously superior to Roman Reigns. Is his next step going to be potentially Brock Lesnar, or where do they go with him from now?
I know they're trying to do Brock Lesnar they're defending him at the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view, which is the greatest pay-per-view name of all time.
No, it's not. It's the worst.
It is the best. Jerry Lee Lewis is awesome. I pray Jerry Lee Lewis goes out and does one of the theme songs for it, or something, or is playing a piano there.
Now, clearly Vince loves him some Jerry Lee Lewis, and if this pay-per-view were in Memphis, I might give him a pass, but it's in Dallas. It's just a horrible name. They're going to be on Raw cutting promos like this Sunday at Great Balls of Fire, and
there should be a drinking.
I can't do it.
There should be a drinking game for when they do that. However many times they break in with laughter. Because who's going to... Dude, that game would be phenomenal to play.
And the drink of choice for said game would be Fireball whiskey.
Fair enough.
Just imagine if they could have a product tie-in with a hard liquor company just one time.
Have they ever had a hard liquor company?
Maybe during the Attitude Era.
Alcohol, have you? Did they?
They've had beer, yeah. I want to say they've had like Bud Light or Miller Lite.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Miller's always gotten a lot of love from Stone Cold.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting what they do with Strowman. If they do a Lesnar thing with him, that has to be SummerSlam. You don't waste it on not to say the next pay-per-view is going to be like a waste, but man, don't do it there. Do it somewhere where it's like you've got tons of eyes on there, and you can either go with two different routes. You have Lesnar showing up and saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm still the baddest man on the planet at SummerSlam," or you have Strowman come in and you can give him a run with the belt for a while until they build up to a rematch there. There's so many different ways that can go that route, but I hope they don't like hot shot. But you're right. They need to keep Strowman hot, and I don't know where you would put him. I mean, he beat the hell out of Roman Reigns to where if Roman shows up tonight or whenever, it's going to be like, well, he better be a while. Which I almost thought, and I'm not trying to play conspiracy theorist here, but did it almost think that possibly there was a good chance maybe there was something else behind that Strowman going over Roman, because Roman looked so weak almost for the past few times they've been face to face that I almost wondered if there's something behind the scenes, not in the script.
That's interesting.
Well, that's very possible. But also from a storyline perspective, really last night shouldn't have happened. I mean, that was 3 weeks after Reigns was thrown off a parking deck.
And then beat up in an ambulance, and then was turned over.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was, and so then he's back. Just a few weeks later. I hurt my ankle in a rugby game a month ago, and I'm still limping around. So it's just like I get that he's like he's got the Superman punch, but the man, he isn't Superman, and I don't want to be one of these old fuddy-duddy old school wrestling fans, but 30 years ago that he would have been out like 6 months to a year.
Oh yeah, just
off TV. But then now they bring him back at just 3 weeks. I mean, at least keep him off until summer. But
of course, back then he would have had an opportunity to go work some other territory for a couple of months, and then he'd be fresh whenever he came back to that TV program there. But unfortunately, we don't have those days anymore. But we want to go ahead and move on to the first full topic of the evening here. And Anwar has got a great topic for us. It's something that is very poignant and very worthwhile in terms of discussing matters of professional wrestling, and that is wrestlers in the business these days who have begun to take really unnecessary risks with spots that are even beyond just like a spot monkey type of things. These are moves and maneuvers that guys are doing that are just wholly unsafe almost. But Anwar, I'll throw it to you. Take it away, sir.
Well, I guess my thing is the idea, and I really want to preface this by saying I'm not talking about your death match or CZW or Japanese death match kind of stuff. I'm not talking about any of that per se, because that's a different topic than what I'm talking about, because that's such a niche genre of things that that's a different topic from this. What I'm really trying to get away with this, or get from, in your guys' opinions, is the idea of doing spots or moves to get a reaction, to pop a crowd, or to do whatever it is that you're looking for. And some good examples, because there's been a lot of injuries lately of people doing spots or getting hurt because they want to go for that extra mile for whatever reason. Examples being ones where guys have done spots to where they there's a video out there, and we saw it in our Facebook group that we're all in, but it's the one, I think Mike Seidel was on the receiving end of a dude doing a flip off the top rope into a Styles clash. Do you guys remember seeing that? I think Joseph, I'm pretty sure, does.
I don't recall that specifically. I'm sure he kicked out at 1.5.
We know,
and
I think we weren't sure if he did. I think that was the art.
I do. I do remember that. Oh, no, he definitely kicked out at 1.5. There's no way that wasn't even a 2 count.
I remember seeing
we
that.
don't see that in the video, but yeah, it's ridiculous.
Or you got examples recently of, I talked last show about Katsuyori Shibata's injury, and a lot of that due to the style that he wrestles. And the guy wrestles such a hard style that is it's almost like unsafe, in the sense that it's one thing to have like the strong style, be stiff, and hey, I'm going to chop the hell out of me, or maybe I'll kick you a couple times, and let's just go for it. And then there's other things when you're doing these headbutts that it's not even like, all right, I'm going to pretend I protect it like the Samoan way. It is more or less like, I'm going to hit you with my head as hard as possible. Keep in mind, it's 2017, and we've seen people in the past within the last year, retire, like Daniel Bryan, because of injuries caused by moves such as a diving headbutt. Basically, one of the things that, not just a Shibata thing, but even using the example I gave of Daniel Bryan, I mean, Hanma, who's one of the staples of New Japan for the past few years, where the biggest underdog, couldn't win a match in the G1, and he was just always he's going to try and he's going to win. He ended up in a match with Gato in a 6-man match, I believe, and it was I say routine, but it's one of those moves. It was a DDT off the middle rope, kind of the Randy Orton style. And somehow something happened to where his neck hit, and he had a severe spinal injury. And just last week, he was able to start to actually stand on his own. Keep in mind that Shibata's injury in the match he had was only like 2-3 weeks ago. So you got to understand that, and this injury happened back in January, I believe. So to continue doing these kind of things, knowing that one of your compatriots is literally like, hey, I might never walk again, let alone wrestle. It just seems very just unsafe, and it just seems very in disregard of life.
It's almost disrespectful in a way.
Yeah, and it just just go ahead.
Plus, I was gonna say, speaking of disrespectful, think about too was Shibata. That happened in a match with Okada, and no disrespect to Shibata, but there's the one man not named Kenny Omega that is their top star, that's their money guy, is Okada. So
he's their future. I mean, he's the next 10, 15 years for that company.
So for you to take those liberties and have like that, those type of spots in that type of match, you're not just disrespecting your body, but you're also, taking liberties with somebody else and also putting the company's future in jeopardy.
It's just very crazy to think that. And again, I know that Japanese culture is different. And I mean, in fact, Hanma, here's a fun fact for you, and for you guys that maybe a lot of people don't know. He was the first person to ever introduce the light bulb into the death match.
Oh, so it's his fault we have like garbage wrestling here in the States.
Sort of. I would say it started with Onita and other guys before him, but yeah, I would say that he had a part of it. But he was, again, it goes back to the old style of doing wrestling matches or these death matches, guys who've been in the business and they had this career as a sorts of doing these things. Look at a guy like Daniel Bryan, who didn't do death matches, but he did that hard, really just tough independent style, and he that doing the injuries and just keep going and going.
So they're
without
definitely
treating it.
There are definitely two schools of thoughts here. There's one, you have like that strong, that quote unquote strong style, that kind of disregard for your body, and which one that doesn't make sense. Again, it's wrestling. We know it's a show. We know it's it's a performance, and we want to be lost in disbelief watching that performance. Like I'd rather see Ricky Morton throw a good punch that I know looks real and looks like it might hurt, but it probably feels like getting hit with a pillow, versus a guy clenching his fist and popping someone as hard as he can. But then the other side of that is just, again, all that, again, because these are things that are done to get a crowd reaction. And it's like, and then if you can't be good at your craft to get that reaction, why are you doing it? And that leads me to those, to what I just quite frankly refer to as garbage wrestling, deathmatch stuff, like the kind of the CZW, even like the FMW stuff in Japan in the 90s. It's just garbage. It's like, it completely turns me off as a fan. Like I can't watch that stuff. It makes no sense. I don't want to see some guy with a bunch of skewers in his forehead or getting power bombed on light bulbs or anything like that. And even if you look at a guy like Dean Ambrose, prior to his making it in WWE, had an entire career built on that garbage. And luckily he was able to kind of get past it and rise above it and carve out a pretty good career. But I mean, for most guys, that's all they've done for the past 10, 15, 20 years, and all they got to show for it are a bunch of hot dog payoffs and scars.
True. But I don't even think... Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, it's okay. I just wanted to add that it's almost indicative of the cultures that are accepting of these things. Because, in Japan, they're very different than we are in terms of what they expect out of these guys. Because... if forever it's been, that you were a professional wrestler meant that you were almost in the same vein as like a warrior. And that's plain and good. If you can take that lifestyle, then more power to you, brother. But, even in the style of their rings and whatnot, because you can watch a New Japan show, and granted, it's got some give to it, but still, you look at the way that ring reacts to those various bumps and whatnot, versus like a WWE ring, it's like night and day in terms of the way these things are. And I'm not trying to say that a American or WWE ring is a trampoline. Definitely not saying that. But still, it just looks like everything about, and this has been my impression of Japanese wrestling forever, it just looks like everything that they do hurts a lot more than it does when exactly. It just looks like it hurts a lot more than when our guys over here do it. And
funny thing is, it looks like it hurts a lot more because it actually probably does hurt a lot more. I want to see it where they make it look like it hurts like hell, but they're perfectly fine afterwards.
And that's like an old Jim Cornette quote, is that he talked about how guys these days, they are killing each other on purpose, whereas back in his heyday, they were doing it to make it look like that and making 3 or 4 times the amount of money. And it's frustrating from the standpoint of someone, like us. You call us smart fans, whatever you want. But I think going beyond that, we are aware of what these guys are doing to their bodies. And we, I think, respect them enough to say, hey, you know what? This is your dream job. If you want to be a professional wrestler and an entertainer in this regard, fantastic. Do that to the best of your ability. But you don't have to go out there and risk life and limb any more than the job actually requires. I'll be just as entertained if you can throw a good haymaker punch and make it look real as if you do some type of a triple moonsault type thing.
And that might be easier said than done. That might be easier said than done for some, though, because like you look at a guy like Daniel Bryan, who's had a 15+ year career, who did a lot of things that were, probably a bit much, probably didn't have to do, and it cut his career short. But even now, he still wants to go out there and wrestle. And even now, if he went out and worked like the lightest, easiest style, he's still putting himself at risk for permanent damage. But he's willing to do that because that's what he loves and that's his passion. And on one hand, yeah, that's admirable that you be that passionate about something, but you also have to think about the long-term effects of your health.
Right.
Too many people just live in the moment. They'll worry about tomorrow, but when tomorrow gets here and you look at like a guy like Dynamite Kid who's confined to a wheelchair, or even like, and I mean to even use the example, like look at all these NFL players, who put their bodies on the line, who just and keep going and now have severe brain damage, or again they're just not able to function as a normal adult, and your fame and your opportunities are limited. And yeah, I get you want to maximize those opportunities, maximize that money and fame, but you got to think about 20, 30, 40 years from now.
That's right. And I think that's what a lot of these young guys in particular have lost sight of. And I'm not sure if it's just here again the culture that is being cultivated presently, or if at some point there was a disconnect between the way they were trained and the way the previous generation was trained to say, it's this sort of crash test dummy style that's acceptable today. Whereas before, if you'd been in the era of Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and whatnot, they probably would have laughed at you for doing that type of thing, because they knew that they were going to be able to work 4 or 5 nights a week and, drink a fifth of bourbon or whatever and be fine. Whereas you were going to be in the infirmary getting your fingers taped together and your ankles, patched up because of the fact that you were killing yourself.
And really, mentioning Ric Flair, and I hate to make this comparison, but look at a guy like Ric Flair who wrestled, into his 60s,
yep.
And I mean he was still pretty good in his mid 50s.
Yep.
Versus a guy like Mick Foley who was retired at 35 and could barely walk today.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And that was just by the style they chose. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to see the 70s 15 minutes of headlocks and an arm drag as a finish. I don't want to see that, but we've gone too far on the opposite end of the spectrum today, where again these guys are absolutely, and it really started with ECW, and it kind of just really carried on from there. So this has been going on for 20 years now, but these guys absolutely kill each other, kick out at 2, and they don't have a career past the age of 40.
Yep.
And I think a lot of it, we've seen it, me, Joseph, and I think we all 3 were at this show. It's a PWX show in Gastonia where it was the Ugly Ducklings versus, I forget who it was against, but I remember that Colby Carino did a dive, but I think someone called it the homicide dive because it's similar to how homicide does, but there was no one there, and I think to the outside, and the armory is pretty much slab, and with some vinyl on top of it, and he just crashed and burned, and I'm like, I thought he died. Like I was like, oh crap, he's dead. Like it was. But all for just like a spot in the middle or beginning of a match where I'm like, come on, man, that could have been a big thing. Again, it's not thinking of that long term. Go ahead.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're not thinking about long term. That was like the second or third match at a show in Gastonia, North Carolina,
and that was the first few minutes of that match too. Let's be clear. And I wasn't like, it wasn't a blow off. It wasn't some like heated rivalry of a match. It was literally like, hey, these are 2 teams. They're wrestling.
And PWX, they draw great crowds, and there are a couple hundred people there. But again, Gastonia, North Carolina,
the Gas House,
exactly.
The Gas House.
This isn't WrestleMania. This isn't again, you're in front of 200 people
it wasn't even in front of like
who likely won't even remember that show the next month.
And it wasn't even like a big match to begin with. It wasn't like it was the main event or this heated rivalry and this is the blow-off. Nope, it was just the match that was thrown together. So, but real quick before we end, the one guy that's a good example of this, who I actually do like, but kind of seeing him do these spots and even not really doing them as much as being done to him, and I'm thinking he's literally letting people do this to him. And people think he's he's this great young talent. I'm like, he's not going to be a great young talent, and that's all he's ever going to be because he's going to not make it to being just a great talent. Is Darby Allin?
That's true.
He's done stuff here in the Carolinas. He was at WrestleCade. He did like the He was in one of the matches that we during the day at WrestleCade for AML's taping, or during one of the Battle Royals. But he's been making a name for himself doing a lot of the WNN stuff, or the Flow Slam stuff, excuse me, with Evolve and stuff. And he had his big matches with Ethan Page and Evolve. And in one of the spots, he's in a body bag thrown into the crowd. And I'm sure that if you've seen it, if you follow WrestleMania, I think it was WrestleMania weekend. And then even before that, there was a match they had, those two, where Ethan Page military presses him into the crowd. Oh, wait, never mind. It wasn't the crowd. It was the chairs that were just there because the crowd dispersed because they were smart enough to get out of the way. This wasn't, and I don't know if they're trying to, if people think, and I don't know, I think he was, the example given was, oh, he's like Spike Dudley. Yeah.
And where's Spike Dudley these days?
Even if he's somewhere, at least he has a degree and he can go back to teaching. I mean, my thing is, Darby Allin's, I've seen him wrestle without doing any of this, and he's a good talent. He's awesome.
Yep.
Really, you really just hope, you would just hope people make smarter decisions, because it's like, and I don't know if they're doing it because it's their ego, they're trying to press the boys in the back, or if they think that's the only way they can get over the crowd. But you got to be smarter. You got to think about the long-term ramifications. And you look at a guy like Shibata, who at this point, he may never even wrestle again.
He may never wrestle again, and it sucks because, I mean, he was the reason I got into wrestling. So,
yep.
Let's be honest. I was the reason you got into wrestling. So.
I was into wrestling before I knew you.
I don't remember that.
There was time. It was
alternative facts.
Alternative facts.
I don't remember any of that.
Oh man. Well, regardless, it is one of these things where you would hope that a discussion like this would hopefully be heard by someone, and that they would take a moment to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I can do something that's just as effective as throwing myself outside of a perfectly good wrestling ring and still connect with the crowd and have a point to what I'm trying to convey through my matches. So
all I'll say is this: all three of us saw the best move of the night when we went to the show in Shelby, North Carolina, in the end of January. The move and spot that got the crowd going more than any damn thing. Any spot, I saw a dude jump to the outside the ring. I saw hardcore stuff with Dreamer, and the best thing that popped the crowd more than anything was damn Ricky and Robert doing their damn double drop kick.
Amen.
And that's all it took. And the crowd ate that crap up like it was the greatest. That's all they did. And I'm pretty sure that one of them missed completely, but didn't matter to the crowd. They loved every single bit of it.
And one last thing too, we didn't even talk about. We alluded to Colt Pecorino's dive. We didn't even talk about all just the insane, all the flippy shit. Don't even get me started on that. I went to one PWX show a couple years ago. Every single match had at least one dive. Again,
every match does these days. It's the end.
Oh, it is. But I remember one show specifically. Literally every single match had it. Now they might every second or third match might have one. But again, it's just like it kills the crowd. It's to the point where I don't even buy front row tickets to PWX anymore because I don't want to get. I don't want anybody to dive on me.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend half the show getting up and moving, playing musical chairs, going back and forth because someone's going to do some flippy shit.
It's gotten to a point where literally a suicide dive has turned into a headlock.
Really and truly, and that's pretty regrettable because here again, we've come from the point where a headlock was acceptable to where a chair shot was acceptable to now someone throwing themselves out of a ring is acceptable. What is the next progression? What is the audience going to be willing to accept as being, the next step in where these guys go with their careers? It's kind of scary to think of what that might be, to be honest with you, because there will always be someone out there who's willing to do it for that hot dog payoff, as we were talking here a little bit ago. But that's going to wrap up our first segment of the night. We'll be back in a few minutes to take a journey somewhere far, far away. We'll be back. Thank you guys for joining us here on the Triple R Podcast. welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out with us here on the Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards podcast. Once again, we do appreciate you giving us those likes, those subscriptions, and all that other fun stuff that you can send our way to let us know that we're doing a good job with this here program. Always like hearing back from people, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow a little community around this show. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. But this is going to be our second segment of the show here tonight, and this is one of those moments where we're going to take a pretty hard left turn from what we normally talk about on this show. Now, we are usually pretty wrestling heavy on this program, but I am a self-described Disney nerd. And yeah, that means exactly what you think it means in terms of me being one of those people who goes to the theme parks and enjoys spending time there and whatnot. It's a very long history for me because whenever I was a kid, our annual vacation most years was to Orlando to see Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and everything else that was coming up out of the ground down there. Of course, in the late 80s, you suddenly had the swing towards the theme parks developing a set of attractions that were based around movie production. That has grown even more so now that you've got Universal Orlando expanding to where they've got some 500 acres of land that's waiting to be developed, and then what is now Disney Studios was previously Disney's MGM Studios. It's expanding by leaps and bounds in terms of adding Star Wars land and car stuff. But the attraction we want to talk about today is something that's going to be opening later this month. The actual grand opening date is scheduled to be May 27th, 2017. And we're talking about the World of Avatar, Pandora, which if you've not seen the movie, you may not have seen it. It's been out for a couple of years now, and it's kind of an odd choice in some people's minds for this to be an association with where it is, because this is an addition that's being built on to Disney's Animal Kingdom park. The kind of funny bit of trivia there is that at one point in time, and you can still see this if you go to the Animal Kingdom park, but on the sign there, it's got some other true blue animals, but then there's an icon of a dragon. People have always wondered, well, why in the hell is there a dragon on the sign? Well, at one point, they actually had a plan to develop a part of that park that was going to be dedicated to mythological creatures, and it never went anywhere. Well, the section that was going to be that mythological creatures section is now the World of Avatar, and it's dedicated to this recreation of Pandora, the home planet of the Na'vi culture. The kind of interesting thing about this development is that if you remember the movie, humans and the Na'vi were not exactly friends at that point in time, which is why they've set this land in the distant future beyond even that, to where the humans and Na'vi cultures are getting along and they're all buddy-buddy.
Really, and they also set the movie in a different world and distant future because it's a blatant ripoff of Pocahontas and Ferngully, the Last Rainforest.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were going to say Dancing with Wolves. I thought that was a better.
I mean, I could count. I mean, there's so many ways that ripped it off, and it wasn't. And it's not even an original name. Like when I hear Avatar, when I think Avatar, I think The Last Airbender.
That was what I thought of too.
And I don't even watch anime.
Does it count as anime? Because that was Nickelodeon.
In my definition of anime, it counts as anime.
Okay.
I'm sure someone will just bend me over the coals because by calling that anime, like, I don't care, because my knowledge of anime is like that and Cowboy Bebop, and if it's Japanese cartoons, it's anime. But I'm sure it's fun. I'll give Disney their kudos. When they have these attractions that go all in, and it's an immersive world. And even for someone like me who's a non-fan and a disbeliever, I'm sure you could even make me into a believer for that time.
Have you been to Disney before, Joseph?
I have never been.
I've
seen pictures. It looks amazing, but I've never been.
Because I have to agree to an extent about the level of stuff they put into this is ridiculous. Like these parks are not, or these even the sections of the parks, like the Star Wars part was even, part of that was still under construction because when I went, it was prior, like a month, not even a month, like 3 weeks before Force Awakens came out. So a lot of it was being prepped up for that, yet it was still like you knew you were in Star Wars area. I mean, there was no question about it. And it wasn't just from pictures of Star Wars characters and ads. It's fully submersive to what you would think the culture of that movie and style would be. Same with the Disney Junior and all this stuff. And so the Avatar thing, I'm sure they probably went all in, and it's crazy to think that, they had, I'm sure, James Cameron had his hand in it as well, since that's his creation.
He did. He was, pretty much there from the get-go in terms of being instrumental in how this whole thing came together. This is really his baby. He talks about in interviews how he was imagining the world of Avatar when he was in high school. So this is something that, and you consider he's, upwards of 50 years old, so this is something that he's been kicking around in his head for 40-something years there, potentially.
Exactly, because the story of Pocahontas is a lot older than 40 years, so he's clearly been thinking about that.
Say what you want, man, but I'll tell you what, that Terminator 2 thing is still going strong at
exactly.
Universal.
If you're going to give me a James Cameron property that I want to be an immersive world in, give me Terminator. Like, put me in a world where I'm being chased by a Terminator.
See, that's the problem, is they've made so many sequels to that movie that they've ruined it.
The diminished returns on that has just ruined it.
Yep.
I would say that if it's anything, I'm sure it'll be awesome, because I definitely want to go back to Disney, and hopefully I'll personally try to plan it around when the Star Wars stuff opens up, because that'll be ridiculous to see.
Yeah. So, you were talking about immersion and the level of detail that they put into this type of thing. This is really the first big example that we have of what Disney is now capable of, because they had the expansion at Magic Kingdom to where they added on the new Fantasyland with the stuff back there in that part of the park. That's one thing. But this
what
was
part's
their
Fantasyland.
Fantasyland. It's in Magic Kingdom.
But what characters?
Oh,
I'm trying to remember characters.
Oh, in New Fantasyland is basically the princesses. You've got the Ariel section back there.
I didn't go there.
Yeah,
I was the newest one, I think, when I went, and the only reason I say that because you said they had new, like when you go to Tomorrowland, that's what I'm thinking of.
Right.
Like you go through there. It's crazy because you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I don't recognize any of this music or whatever. I realized that they were playing like the Tron soundtrack through a lot of that stuff, which is awesome because Daft Punk did. It's a phenomenal soundtrack,
yep.
But it's just crazy how in depth even little things you're not just hearing It's a Small World or like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse songs. Whatever land you're in, you're immersed in it, even with the food and the music. So, yeah,
Oh yeah,
trying to remember what part of that park was.
I tell you, and the big thing here is the comparison that can be drawn between what Universal Studios did with the development of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and how people were blown away by that. Well, the thing about it is, those developments are pretty much 10 years old now. This stuff here is brand new tech. This is all brand new ride systems and animatronics. And there was a media event, basically a media preview held this past weekend. And I follow a lot of these blogs and vlogs on social media. So Saturday morning, when I started to see these videos crop up of, saying a daytime walkthrough of Pandora, I'm like, what is this? And suddenly the whole land has been opened up to where you can see all this stuff that's been talked about forever. It's amazing to see the animatronics, because there are several full-scale Na'vi characters that you encounter when you're in the world of Avatar. The thing about the Na'vi is that these creatures are 7, 8, 9 feet tall, so they're not like human size in terms of proportions. But the fluidity of movement, the realistic nature of the skins that they have on these things, it's just crazy to think what they've been able to do And kind of as a side joke, I had somebody on Twitter said, well, if they can make these things look this good, then what are they going to be able to pull off whenever they have to stick Donald Trump in the Hall of Presidents? But that's going to be a totally different thing there. So, yeah. It really impressed me to see how all these things got put together, the level of detail, the immersion factor, and that this is all biological stuff. This isn't like buildings. This is mountains. This is trees. This is plant life. And evidently there are even, in some of the water features, there are these things that are, again, animatronics, but they're supposed to be some form of like life that's living in these waters that is from Pandora. So it's just crazy to think all the stuff that has gone into developing this whole thing. The artists that are doing these projects are just crazy talented, and also the construction engineers who are putting these things together and using techniques that have never been developed before. It just really blows you away. So, and it's impressive to me to think that this is not only what we've got now, but this is what we've got to look forward to in the future, because, Anwar, as you were talking there, the Star Wars land is in development currently, both in the Florida parks and also out in Anaheim with the Disneyland park out there. But
yeah, it's going to be pretty. You made the comparison earlier about the Harry Potter. I went to Harry Potter, and I'm not a Harry Potter person. And I was at Universal when we were down there for Disney, and it was kind of like, whoa, like it was pretty cool how they set it up and how you have to kind of get there. They're keeping theme with how the movies are, and it was pretty awesome to see that kind of stuff. And again, the attention to detail is what's going to matter for everybody. And what's crazy is, and maybe a couple people are listening that would understand this, or even they're reading this, is even though Disney owns the Marvel properties or whatnot, there's a great articles out there to see why they don't have them in their parks.
Yep,
it's a legality issue with the contracts done in the 70s and 80s from Marvel, because back then that's why you have movies on Fox versus Disney. Why are the X-Men here? Why is Fantastic Four here? Why is Spider-Man over here? Like all these different things. Because ironically enough, the Spider-Man movie was supposed to have been made in the mid-90s by James Cameron. I'm not sure if everybody remembers that, but that was the best rumor ever as I heard as a kid. And maybe one day James Cameron will be involved with it, because that would be really awesome.
They optioned the first Spider-Man movie in the 70s.
Yep.
And nothing really came of it until, like I said, the 90s. And again, Cameron was on board. I think he wanted Leo.
He wanted Leo, I think, and then he was using the company that went out of business was also part. Like there was a whole fallout of it. And it's phenomenal reading just to see the amount of properties that Marvel sold off, because now that they're all under one house with Disney, it's like Disney still kind of scrap. It's funny that Disney still has to scrap to get anything, but they're still trying to figure stuff out as far as, because when you walk to Disney properties, you don't even you barely see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Agent Carter stuff, because when we were there, Agent Carter had just come out as their first big season. You didn't see any of that until you went to the cafeteria and saw an ad for it.
And it's funny too, they had of course Marvel, because we know Marvel now as the big 800-pound gorilla in the comic book world, but in the 80s and early 90s they were struggling. They were hurting. They sold off a lot of their properties, or sold off the rights, to a lot of the things. That's why it's everywhere. And even you look at something like Fantastic Four. I think Fantastic Four was first optioned in the 80s, and
Thor. It was Thor, the Hulk, and Fantastic Four in the 70s and 80s. I know the Hulk and Thor got in the 70s due to the TV show and the likeness of Thor used in the Hulk TV movie in the trial of Bruce Banner.
And I remember, we had the 1994 Fantastic Four movie, which, never saw the light of day. It is on YouTube. It was never actually officially released, but again, they only made that so they could retain the rights.
Yep.
So,
yeah. It's just amazing that they have to go through all that just to try to get that kind of thing. And again, they were losing money. If the name X-Men wasn't in the comic or in the property by Marvel, it wasn't selling, which is unfortunate, because there's a lot of good stuff that came out in the 90s. But if you're an X property, then sure, you're on fire. And if your name's Wolverine, you don't have nothing to worry about. But it was fun. The irony is, in 2008, when Iron Man was released, And anyone who's ever followed comics knows that Iron Man was like one of the big, the Avengers, one of the Avengers, the original Avengers. He's one of the first big comic book characters people know. He was considered a B character when the movie was released because people were like, oh, well, it's just Iron Man. It's not like it's Spider-Man or Wolverine. It's just Iron Man. And now, look back, 20, damn near 11 years or almost 10 years down the road and where they're at now as far as movies and how Disney basically helped them get that far. Which hopefully with the Pandora thing with Avatar, I really hope that James Cameron gets off his ass and actually does the next movies. Well, I mean, he's talked about it for so long that at this point it's like I just want to see it.
That's one of the criticisms about this. Sorry, Joseph, go ahead.
Well, no, Anwar says, I can't wait for Cameron to get off his butt and make the next movie. And I was like, I can't. I don't.
When Avatar first came out, that was probably, I will still argue that Avatar is probably the best example of 3D used in any movie.
Yes.
False. No. I saw it in IMAX 3D. I left. If you guys remember the cartoon from the mid-90s, The Critic.
Yeah.
Where did you go? You were like, it stinks?
It stinks. And I will still argue to this day that the best use of 3D technology I've seen in any movie.
I was going to say Transformers.
Is Jackass 3D.
I never saw it in 3D, so I can't this way. The reason I say that, and there's good movies out there to see in IMAX 3D, and like Gravity was phenomenal in IMAX 3D, and so was Pacific Rim, just great. However, Avatar was the first to do it, but Cameron was smart enough to shoot the movie to where it wasn't just particular scenes in a movie that were 3D. Like the entire movie was basically you're immersed in it. And whereas now when you see a movie in IMAX 3D, it's either the sound that's really nice and maybe a couple scenes in the movie, like a Transformers, where it's like, a couple scenes you can clearly tell that's a 3D part and that's it. Whereas Avatar really was like from front to back was very immersed in that 3D world as opposed to now. So that's why I think it was still did it best because it wasn't just a section of a movie or a section of a scene. However, I never did see Jackass 3D in the theater. I saw it on Netflix. So I can't disagree.
Surprisingly good 3D effects for that movie. I was very surprised. But you're right. Most movies they're kind of either shot and only certain scenes are shot, or even some movies are shot. They're kind of retrofitted with 3D,
which sucks.
Really, truly.
But I think part of the reason what also hurt Avatar it was just a shitty movie. So it just wasn't good. And like I said, it was not an original story. Like just nothing about it.
It was. I will say I've probably seen it twice since, and only because it was on TV. And there's some good stuff out there. Somebody made an article about it because I think it was talking about this upcoming Pandora part because it came out of left field in the grand scheme of things. Because unless you follow it or kind of read it, you keep up with movie news about Cameron and always talking about this is my next movie. I'm going to do the next Avatar movies. It's kind of like nobody talks about Avatar the way they talk about other movies from that same time frame. Like there's a group of movies that came from that era.
You know why people don't talk about it? Because it sucked. And here's my rankings of Pandora. 1, Pandora, the music streaming service. 2, Pandora, the bracelet I can get from Jared. And 3, this Pandora. People don't talk about it because it was terrible. It wasn't good. And I get it that it was like it made $1 billion plus and was like the highest grossing movie of all time. Hype can lead to that. That movie was terrible.
Well, let's put it this way: James Cameron is the type.
I'd rather watch a marathon of Baron Corbin matches than watch Avatar.
Wow!
Oh my gosh!
Can't be that bad.
Well, I'll put it to you this way, Joseph. You've got 4 more chances apparently coming to have your opinion changed on this because, from what I've been reading, Cameron is seemingly ready to go and start shooting the 4 sequels that he's got in mind for the original Avatar film.
And he will have all the money in the world to do it. He will. It's James Cameron.
He may have all the money, but does he have all the time? I mean, he's got to be in his 60s.
Doesn't matter. What else is he going to do? He's
die.
He probably realized Terminator. He's probably a real life Terminator, movies. And he's just come back to be like, I want to write my life story.
And what else can he do? What else can he do? He can die while making 4 more movies. These movies, it's not like he turns them out. It's not like he makes them in like 9 months. He spends a decade per movie. 4 decades.
I would bet money if he was in the middle of a movie and died, they would do the same thing. Somebody would pick up the reins like Spielberg did for Kubrick with AI. I will bet money that happens. And even then, Kubrick wasn't really even that far into AI before he passed away. So
really and truly,
I would bet money. Do it now.
I was agreeing with you as far as Kubrick, having passed away not too long into the production of that movie.
Yeah, and and Spielberg was more than happy to do it. I could see Cameron. You know what's going to happen. Cameron passes away, and then Zack Snyder's going to come in.
That'll make it even better.
You know that's going to happen.
So it'll turn Cameron's like 2-hour, 45-minute movie into like a 6-hour movie. That'll be even worse.
Zack Snyder's made some good movies. I can think at least 2.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Watchmen and 300.
You named one
did
good
I
movie.
say? Do what now?
You named one good movie.
Which one was that one?
300. 300 was phenomenal.
Watchmen's awesome. It's awesome. Even with the ending, or rather, even with the plot device not changing from the squid to the explosion, don't care. It was still an awesome movie.
No. Again, 300, phenomenal. 300 was ahead of its time. It was a great movie.
That doesn't get talked about often as much as it should. And that movie is an awesome movie.
It is. And even I enjoyed the sequel.
I still want to see it because I wanted to see it. And I actually want to see I meant to catch it recently because of your recommendation of it. Because you talked about how well you liked it.
It was surprisingly good. And I think part of it was maybe my lowered expectations. But Zack Snyder, everything he's done since then has been garbage. Don't even get me started on Batman and Superman.
I mean, we can get started.
No, we can't. We gotta keep this podcast moving.
And that's a good point. And we're also gonna see if we can maybe get Joseph to move on down to the world of Avatar and check out some of those Disney parks since he's never been. I'm sure we could convince his wife to take him on a trip down there at some point in time.
I will get down there one day eventually. It has been talked about. It is in the works.
You guys will enjoy it, trust me. As someone who goes there seemingly once a year, it's good to be able to go somewhere where you can get treated and have good food and whatnot and have it all taken care of. So it's a good experience, but we'll have to wait and see how the world of Avatar is received by audiences everywhere, as the park will be opening to the general public, as we mentioned before, on the 27th of May. It's probably going to be just like the other expansions that Disney has released, to where there will be some soft openings before then. I know there is an annual pass holder event coming up in the next 2 weeks here as well, so they're going to have plenty of opportunities to shake down those rides and make sure everything is good to go before the general public gets in there. But that's going to wrap up our second segment of the evening. Appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out the Triple R podcast here with Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards. We'll be back in a few moments. If you're interested in a getaway to Central Florida but don't know where to start, you should contact Magical Wishes Travel with the Truesdales to help you plan a truly unforgettable vacation. Magical Wishes Travel with the Truesdales can handle booking all aspects of your trip, from hotel rooms to theme park tickets and stroller rentals to dining reservations. Magical Wishes Travel with the Truesdales can take the stress out of planning your next vacation. Contact them today via their Facebook page, www.facebook.com/MWT-Truesdales. That's facebook.com/MWT-Truesdales.
So these days, everybody's asking for new stars. Like who when they're gonna make a new star? I'm tired of seeing Cena on top. I'm tired of seeing Reigns on top. Well, the WWE finally gives a new star in the making, and I'm talking about my man. Don't hinder Jinder Mahal. And when he made his ascension to the main event picture, people immediately shit all over it. And I just don't get it. You know, I mean, I get why. You know, they're mad. They're not mad that they got a new star. They're mad because they got a new star that they didn't pick. You know, they wanted Sami Zayn. They wanted Cesaro. They wanted someone else. But they got Jinder Mahal. And now, granted, I am a Jinder Maholic. So...
did you come up with that yourself?
I did. I trademarked everything. And,
Good job,
I'm a huge fan of this. And my whole thing is when people are so quick to just poo on the idea, I just say 3 simple letters: JBL. If you think back to 2004, the exact same scenario. You had Bradshaw, who had been with the company for, at that point about 8 years, primarily in a tag team with Farouk, and all of a sudden was catapulted into the main event picture with a new character. And not only did he hit a home run, he became a wrestling god. And I'm not saying Jinder's going to become a wrestling god, but give the guy a chance. I think he's exciting. I think it's fresh. I look forward to it. Hell, I'm rooting for him to win the WWE Championship. Again, it'll be a shock to the world. It'll be a nice change of pace, and I'm loving it. And for all the people that are hating on it, that are just, and they're hating on it really because again, it wasn't a guy that they picked. It's not a guy that they anointed. Again, if it's Sami Zayn, no one's complaining at all. But the fact that it's Jinder, and granted, also the WWE didn't do Jinder any favors by having him lose basically for the last 6 months since he's been back with the company, and they had him lose for the last 2 years he was with the company in his first run.
Well, I think that's what people are having such a hard time digesting with this, is that it's gone from, okay, this is a guy who was a member of 3-man band with Heath Slater and the newly re-signed Drew McIntyre, to where, okay, now this guy's a contender. I think that's the part that people are having a hard time swallowing there.
No, I think they just don't like him. That's my thing. It's not even that. I mean, he's just the guy. They're like, you know what? We didn't like this guy before. We're not going to like him now. For no other reason, they just don't like him. They can't really. No one can ever give me a good reason why they don't like him. And now, of course, they're like, well, because he's on the steroids, and we don't know that. Yes, he's come back like he's jacked, and I mean he's got veins in places most people don't even have places. And if you look at him back in like 2012, he was kind of flabby. But I mean, why can't we just give the guy credit for hard work? I mean, in the WWE, they clearly they have they drug test their wrestlers. And, I'm pretty sure he'd have got popped at some point in the last year if he was on something. So, I mean, the guy's he's put in the work. He's busted his ass. Again, I think he's an interesting new character. I think he could be a great heel, a great bad guy. I look forward to seeing what they can do with him. And again, I'm not one to completely dismiss the idea. One, I welcome new stars. I'm very happy we're seeing it, especially on SmackDown. And if you think about it, let him beat Randy Orton and then put him in a program with AJ Styles. That would be, pardon the pun, it would be phenomenal.
Well, it's an opportunity here for not only him, but for, I think, up-and-coming talent, period, to show that, hey, the WWE system is functional and it works in terms of developing these guys out of NXT and out of other areas, because Jinder, he's been with them for a long time. He had a period there where he was not with the company after the 3MB thing, but, he was with Florida Championship Wrestling. He's been through developmental in various stages there, and the fact that he's still around and in this, I think, lends credence to what they're doing. And by proxy, the success that he may enjoy from this is going to give now the Bollywood boys a rub, because they've got them involved in this. And I think that's a pretty cool extension, because those guys, they were brought in through the Cruiserweight Classic and kind of floundered after that. But now that they've gotten an opportunity here, it's something that they can spread their wings and potentially have a big to do with this whole thing and how it shakes down.
Exactly. So it's farther reaching for him, and again, any opportunity for them to take chances on guys, and sometimes you're going to take chances, and it's going to be a swing and a miss. I really think, and do I think Jinder's going to hit a home run? I'm not going to go that far. I think he'll hit a solid double. Solid double might turn into a triple. I think he's going to make the most of this opportunity, and it's also not forget, this isn't the first time he's really been in a championship picture. He was in the finals to be the first NXT champion.
It was.
Unfortunately, he lost to Seth Rollins. So he's been in the mix somewhat. I mean, granted, much larger scale, much bigger stage, a much more prestigious championship. But again, I think that it's a great opportunity for him. And again, I think he's going to make the most of it.
And then don't forget that, Robert, you made the point that Jinder had left and came back. He came back part of the reason to help fill the roster on the SmackDown and or Raw side. As they were acquiring past talent, hey, when you come back, to just kind of basically be, filler almost. And for the fact that he came back under those pretenses and just made a point to, no, I'm not going to just be filler. I'm going to work my ass off to be in a position to help better my opportunities. And you could say, I mean, let's see, to be fair, if he were to be let go within a month or everything, he'd be one of the top guys on the indie scene to not just because, he's a former WWE guy. Well, let's see, he had this big spot at ESPN, for basically, I saw the ESPN. It was at WrestleMania, but it's basically your Sports Center play of the night with Rob Gronkowski. So you have that going for you. Now you're in this feud and top heel on SmackDown with Randy Orton for the belt, and you have henchmen. Those are three things that really make you think that, hey, this guy's actually worth a crap. I mean, I'm all for it. Like, I don't care that it's not a guy that I'm like, man, I'm not sitting here like, man, I wish so-and-so would get the belt. I'm like, I'm okay with it. It's different. Plus, you never know what could happen. You could play up. You can get pretty creative with some of these matches and pairings, especially on the SmackDown side.
And you know who else on SmackDown had henchmen and a long championship reign? JBL. I'm just saying, and this is the first time a guy's been thrust from like the lower mid card to the main event picture. Bob Holly did it in 2004 in a short program with Brock Lesnar and proceeded to go right back to the bottom of the card. I do think Jinder, can have sustained success. I think part of it too is they recognize all the work he's put in. He came back at the same time as Kurt Hawkins. Where's Kurt Hawkins now?
Well, Kurt Hawkins has got that stupid cane though.
He's also fat.
He's also on Raw.
He also came back fat and out of shape with knockoff Triple H logos on his gear. Jinder came back. He was jacked and in shape. Again, and maybe part of them just like jobbing him out for the last 6 months was, to humble him and kind of test him. And, who knows? But, I think they see a guy who's really put in the work, who's, again, you could tell he's definitely put the effort in to make himself better. And I'm not saying Kurt Hawkins hasn't, but the results are clear with Jinder.
Going back to what you were talking about there a minute ago, because there has been some fan backlash in just him coming back the way he appears. And, we have no idea if is he on the gas, who cares, in my opinion, because clearly he's done something to improve himself. And it could have just been him cutting a lot of weight, because some of these guys, they're already, muscled to the hilt. It's just that sometimes, like, I'll bring up an example. Our own Cedric Alexander, he was a guy who was already in incredible shape. He cut weight, and then suddenly he looks shredded as can be. It's not necessarily that he gained that much muscle; it's that he cut body fat. It could be the same thing with Jinder, to where he already was in great shape.
That's very true. And I also love how most of the people that are criticizing him or railing him are also guys who couldn't run a mile to save their life. So, these are people that go to the swimming pool and don't take their shirts off, and they're criticizing this guy for being on the gas. And you're absolutely right. Because again, he was big. He had a decent build, but he wasn't as defined and cut. And it could he could have just dropped 20 pounds and just added definition. We don't know.
Yeah.
look at a guy like Finn Balor when he was in New Japan, and Joseph and I have had this conversation.
Yes,
how shredded Finn Balor when the former Prince Devitt in New Japan looks compared to now. Not saying he was on anything back then, but he's cut now, which is crazy to think. But just imagine him more like just ridiculously like Jinder, except it's Finn Balor at his height. It's ridiculous how it's. I mean, people are gonna. I think people are just trying to find whatever they can to knock the guy, and I think it's
exactly
unfair.
That's what it is.
It's just unfair. Like it's the same people who don't like Roman Reigns because it's Roman Reigns, or I want to boo John Cena, or I don't like this guy. It's like, well, that's great, but I mean, to Joseph's point, at the end of the day, is they're there to entertain you, and if you're entertained by it, cool. If you don't like it, that's cool too. But at some point, you run out of things to dislike.
And I'll say this too. I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of sick of seeing the same people, and I'm talking about fans, shit on guys just for the sake of shitting on them. And forever that's been the case with indie fans and with wrestling fans in general. But I want to say we're beyond the point of people just disliking someone because of no good reason whatsoever.
But we're not, because there's a ton of people that hate Cena for no good reason, and he's been the most consistent top guy who's just had nothing but great matches.
But I would hope. I'm sorry.
The thing is with Cena too, it's just like, it's like everybody would, he would have great matches with like, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Cesaro, AJ Styles, and they would always give the opponent the credit. But the fact is, it takes two to tango, and if all those guys aren't that good that they can carry just anybody. I mean, Cena goes in there, busts his ass, and puts in the work and has phenomenal matches. But and I challenge anybody who's like, "Oh, Cena sucks." I'm like, give me a good reason, and they can't. They say like the 5 moves of doom and all that, but I'm like, hey, go look at Steve Austin in his heyday, see how many moves he did,
and then reverse that though, because Cena actually got as. And I think a lot of this is attributed to the type of style he was working with guys like Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, and Cesaro. But look at the matches he had with all three of those guys in the quote unquote later years, so to speak. I get within the last few years, and they're way better than any match he had even when he was in his prime, so to speak, when he was in the midst of being the guy. It's just. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anybody who wants to still use the moveset of John Cena as an excuse to not like the guy obviously doesn't want to look back and not see Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior
or the Rock. Yeah. The Rock wasn't a technical wizard either, and he only had 5 moves, one of which was a goofy elbow.
That goofy elbow made millions of dollars.
It has,
and probably billions.
And he's a billionaire now thanks to his box office success.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's a goofy elbow that he took that and became a superstar. Yeah, but you go back and watch his matches. You just like Cena, you can count it. You can set your watch to it.
Yep.
And again, I challenge anybody, and to that point, I'll challenge people who say Jinder's no good. Like, give me a reason. Give me some reasons. And I'm nowhere near comparing Jinder to Cena at all. But I mean, again, and I think part of it too is just like, and also just give him a chance. If he's gonna fail, let him fail. But I mean, you cry for fresh blood. You cry for people to have opportunities, and someone's given an opportunity, then you completely shit on it. Like, let it play out, let it happen, and if he fails, he fails, and then let someone else step up.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier about certain fans in this era in particular being disappointed that it's not a certain individual getting that opportunity. Like, you've got people, and this is a topic for a different podcast, but we're to a point to where WWE has this stock of well-known names from the independent circuit in their employ that they could plug in any of these scenarios almost, and people would be just riotously happy over the fact that their hero is now on TV or whatnot. But a lot of those guys wouldn't be fit for this role. This is a very specific position and a very specific opportunity that Jinder has, not only in terms of being, the heel on Smackdown, but also, sort of taking an opportunity to, we'll say, extend the whole cultural thing here, where you've got, here again, somebody who's, I don't know a good word to put it here, but who's obviously sort of that Middle Easterner type of character against an American in the form of Randy Orton. So you've got that visual going there that's just a classic example of good guy, bad guy type booking. So it's one more thing.
And it works, though.
It does.
I think it works, but I think it comes to a point where it's like, it's not like you're booing the Iron Sheik. Oh, man, the Iron Sheik. It seems a little more like disingenuous these days when someone boos because of that. It's not necessarily I don't know, it just seems like to be fair, Jinder's done one or two things so far that has made him a heel, whereas the Iron Sheik beat Bob Backlund, had the belt. Oh my God, what's good? They made it. It's okay. So Jinder's made done two things, and people are like, oh, I hate that guy. It's like, oh, he's the worst. I think you're hating him because of something else, not necessarily I don't know. See, again, you're right. I think you're crossing a line, or not crossing a line, but you're getting to a point where people they're just picking whatever, and that may be the easiest thing to pick, but I think it's the dumbest thing, because they're the same people who cheered Hulk Hogan, who cheered The Rock, or cheered it's ridiculous.
But we'll have to see where it goes with Jinder. I think we're all on the same boat here in terms of saying that this is potentially something cool. It's definitely them taking advantage, and I say them, I'm talking about WWE. It's definitely them making the most of an opportunity and saying, okay, well, we're not going to just regurgitate the same booking that we had the past 6 months and saying, okay, well, here's Randy Orton and AJ Styles again, and here's AJ Styles and Dolph Ziggler again. This is a foreign territory that we're going to charge into wholeheartedly. And I think all three of us are looking forward to seeing what comes out on the other side there. So we'll have to wait and see where Jinder winds up. If he gets a title run, then fantastic. If not, hopefully it's at least something memorable that we can look back on and say, hey, you remember when Randy Orton and Jinder did those things back on that run there in 2017. But that is our third segment of the evening. We're going to take one more break, and then we'll be back to wrap up the program with unpopular opinions. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here on the Triple R Podcast. Stay tuned.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Are you looking for custom T-shirts with a quick turnaround? Then look no further than SOS Custom Tees, your source for custom T-shirts, vinyl decals, tumblers, and more. Contact them today via their website, www.soscustomtees.com, and be sure to check out all the designs that are available in their online store. All right, everybody, appreciate you guys tuning in with us once again here on the Triple R Podcast, Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards. You can catch us on YouTube, on Your Listen, all kinds of platforms that we're going to be coming to you in the near future on as well. But we want to wrap up the program with our usual segment here of unpopular opinions, where we share something that we don't necessarily think is in the same vein as the rest of popular culture. But it's our own, and we don't always agree with each other, but that's the fun part of this little segment. And since I was talking about the World of Avatar there earlier in my segment, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that the World of Avatar will not be around by the time the final movie in this series is released. I think it'll be either trashed and turned into something else, or it might not even be open there, period.
Well, that's such a bold prediction, because the final movie in the series will never even be released.
Wow, this guy.
This isn't the Fast and Furious franchise. They'll be on Fast and Furious 47 by the time they finish the second Avatar movie.
This is Vin Diesel's grandchildren that are in the program now.
Exactly.
Anwar, what do you got for us?
Unpopular opinion. I really don't have one, because I'm still kind of stuck from last episode's the injury thing and the thing we talked about this time. I will say this: I think the popular opinion of the talent trying to go overboard for my entertainment, and them doing as much as they can for a hot dog or $5, is ridiculous based on the fact that, oh, well, I paid money to see them. They need to do everything for me. It's like your own personal video game. I don't go to PWX shows to see a guy do all these flips just so he can land on me, which has already happened once. Tracer X. Nor do I go to shows to have to move around the entire time because they decide to go out in the middle of the crowd in the second match of the night. I go to a show to be entertained. If some of the best shows I've ever been to were ones that were self-contained in the ring and just put on a good entertaining show. Didn't have to go all the way through the crowd. There wasn't trying to be a product that fits to everything. Like you had all these flying guys, hardcore matches, or this. It didn't have to be all that. It was just literally two guys in a ring wrestling, or a tag team wrestling each other in the ring. I think it's ridiculous that as fans, there's an expectation that when we go to these local events, oh man, they better go all out, and they better. I don't go to wrestling. I used to say, and I still sort of say this, I go to wrestling shows, PWX or whoever, based on who the talent is. But even if I'm a big fan of the talent, like recently we had the PWX show, Enter the Dragon, and I'm a huge Red Dragon, I'm a huge Kyle O'Reilly fan. But I didn't go because I have my obligations with my personal life and things that I got going on at home that don't put me there. Not because I don't want to pay money to see somebody I like or dislike. But at the same time, if I went, I wouldn't be there expecting them to put on the greatest matches I've ever seen. I think they expect to be a good show and be entertained for what I paid for, not for them to almost kill themselves just so they can feel like, man, hopefully I just dive off the top rope into the crowd and maybe, he'll buy my $5 8x10.
And there's definitely a big difference between like maximum effort. Because again, whether I'm paying $5, $40, $1,000, I want to see those guys give maximum effort. But I don't really care to, again, see them do things that are unnecessarily, harmful. I'm right there with you. Even like, Red Dragon, they were here, is in Hickory, North Carolina, which is not much bigger than Gastonia. Well, a little bit bigger. They do have a pretty nice convention center. But I digress. But I'm sure those guys went in there, busted their ass, gave the fans their money's worth. But they could also do so without taking any extreme liberties with their bodies.
Yep, for sure. Joseph, what do you got for us in terms of unpopular opinions?
By more so than I've already given you. Like Avatar sucks. I'm all in on Jinder Mahal. I'm pretty sure those are two hugely wildly unpopular opinions.
Yeah, you're pretty well batting 1,000 for the show here in terms of that type of stuff.
I mean, give me some more time. I'll think of some more.
So if you got a third, you can pull out and go ahead and hit for the cycle on this particular show, or do we need to ask you again another time?
I'll probably save it for another time. I'm sure I'll come up with something, but again, really, it's just for me, I just got to go back. It's not an unpopular opinion. It's just me talking right now. But I just got to go back and watch Payback because I heard it was a phenomenal show. Save for the House of Horrors match, but that might be my unpopular opinion next time. I watch it. I was like, that House of Horrors wasn't that bad. You never know.
You never know. And besides,
there's something for everybody. And I mean, granted, when I heard House of Horrors, I immediately thought of the Chamber of Horrors, which would have been a much better match on a WWE pay-per-view.
Yep. Well, you've got to get busy applying for your copyright to the Jinder Mahalics slogan.
Yes, so. I do. My legal team's already working on it. Going to try to push that through and get some T-shirts printed and hopefully not get sued.
Well, it just makes you wonder what kind of adult beverages Jinder likes, if any. Wonder what he's into these days as far as libations are concerned.
He's not drinking beer, I'll tell you that much, because you can't get cut like that, drinking liquid bread. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for the May 1st, 2017 edition of the Triple R Podcast, Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards. To my good brothers here, Joseph and Anwar, appreciate you guys being a part of the program, and we appreciate you folks at home listening in once again. Join us on the next edition of the program coming soon. Until then, we'll see you down the road.